Hi everyone, today I am doing a 10 looks one palette using the new Anastasia Beverly Hills Subculture palette, which I've had a bit of time to play around with now. If you don't know what this series is about, it's basically about encouraging people to use the makeup they have, giving some inspiration as to what kind of looks you can create, and I usually do more, wearable, subtle looks to your more dramatic. So I will be splitting this into part 1 and part 2, the way I did it with my previous video on the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette. Now, there's a lot of controversy surrounding this palette because of the formula and how difficult it is to work with. So I will be sharing, what worked for me and these are the looks that did work for me, and hopefully if you've decided to give this a go and keep the palette, then hopefully this will be useful to you. There's heaps of reviews out there, so I won't be reviewing this palette, but I will be giving, some pointers as to how I've used it to make it work. Anyway, I hope you found this useful and thanks for watching. The first look is this warm smoky eye, which I've created using only 3 shades, and it's the kind of look I do if I want to be a bit fancy without too much effort. So for all 4 looks, I'm using the same eye primer, which is this one from Concrete Minerals. I really like it because it helps eyeshadows go over my textured eyelids. Personally, I like to tap off any excess onto a paper towel, which is what I'm doing to reduce any fallout. And I'm going in with Dawn all over my mobile lid with a large natural hair shader brush. This shade is a matte peachy beige shade and it pretty much matches my skin tone. Next, I'm taking this matte orange shade called New Wave and putting that into the crease really liberally. This is the result of just 1 tap into the pan with the excess on the paper towel. It's nothing too crazy, and I definitely found this to be the best way to make sure not too much pigment is deposited on the eye. And it also just means I don't have to clean up as much if there's any fallout under my eye. I'm just going to blend out any harsh lines and make sure that there is a gap between my crease and brow bone. I'm going to take Fudge, which is a matte warm brown shade, and just pat that into my outer V and work it in, trying not to gouge my eye out at the same time. I definitely noticed that with these darker shades, it is easier to work in by patting the eyeshadow into the areas of your eyes that you want to concentrate the pigment on rather than swiping motions. They don't smoke out and blend in as easily as with the lighter shades. So I am using kind of small amounts and then building it up. So I am laying this shade down from the center of my eyelid to the outer V and creating a winged shape because I find it to be flattering for my eye shape, but you can take it out as far as you want. And again, I'm just blending out the edges. I haven't got any of my base on, so once I finish my eye makeup, that will clean everything up a bit more. I'm going back in with New Wave to build up that matte orange shade so there's more of a contrast. Taking Fudge again, I'm going to use that on my lower lash line to give it some definition using a detailed pencil brush. As usual, I like to connect the line up to my outer V and then bring it 3/4 of the way in. I'm going to take some more of Dawn from the inner lid up to the center just to create some more contrast and to brighten the eye. Because it's gone on very pigmented, I'm just taking a fluffy brush and blending where Dawn and Fudge meet. I'm going to deepen the outer V by taking more of the shade Fudge and using a natural haired tapered brush, which is more precise, and that's going to add a bit more depth to the outer V. Lastly, I'm going to blend everything in again and do my base and concealer, which I prefer to do after if I'm working with eyeshadows which have a lot of fallout. So this is the final look. I think the orange has worked really nicely to make this brown smoky eye a little bit more interesting. Also, all the products I've used are going to be in the description below. Next look is what I describe as a sort of grungy, naked halo eye look. First, I'm taking the shade Dawn and I'm using that all over my eyelid and up to my brow bone as well. It kind of just blends in with my skin tone as well as cover up any veins or pigmentation I have on my eyelid. Next, I'm going to wet a synthetic brush and pack on the shade Cube, which is a white duochrome shade with a pink shift. I'm just concentrating that on my mobile lid and packing it on because the pigmentation is so weak. And I have to say this is the worst performing shade of this palette because of its lack of pigmentation. There are definitely better dupes I have in my collection. Also, if you notice, it does ball up, so I am just patting that in with my finger just to smoothen out the texture. Using the same damp brush, I'm also going to add Cube as an inner corner highlight. Then I'm going to take the matte taupe shade called Mercury and I'm placing that on the outer V again in patting motions using a natural hair brush. This brush looks dirty, but I have cleaned it off with a color switch kind of hair sponge thing, and it does get any excess pigment off that I've used from previous eyeshadows. I'm adding more of Dawn into the crease area just to soften things up and then blend everything out. I'm going to add more of Mercury on the inner lid area and just continue to pat that in and work it up to where the crease shade meets without sort of placing that shade on top of Cube. I'm also going to work that shade into the crease area and then blend any harsh edges out. I'm also going to add Mercury to my lower lash line to give my eyes some much needed definition where I have basically non-existent lower lashes. After I do my lower lash line, usually I reassess and see if I need to do anything else, and I'm going to deepen the inner and outer edges just a bit. I'm also going to go back in with Cube on the center of my lid just to intensify the, halo and get as much color payoff as possible. Then lastly, one more blend job and I'm done. So this is my version of a wearable halo eye. I've just mixed some ColourPop liquid lipsticks to get this greyish nude lip, which I think complements it quite well. Third look was inspired by Iris, aka Picky P from Instagram. She does some really beautiful looks, and I'm going to link her account below so you can check her out. First, I'm adding Roxy into my crease, which is a matte peach shade, and I'm using a really large tapered fluffy brush from Wayne Goss. If you can't already tell, I really like these brushes and they work well to diffuse pigmented eyeshadows like this one. I'm not being particularly precious about the placement, I'm just kind of adding this as my first layer. Next, I'm going to blend everything out using my very well loved Chikuhodo brush. I'm going to take some of Destiny, which is a matte olive shade, and place that on my mobile lid. Again, I've just tapped off any excess onto my paper towel so there's no fallout because it's a somewhat dark shade. I'm also going to bring that shade out all the way to the outer edges of my eyelid. I'm taking more of Roxy on the crease to build it up a bit more so it stands out against the olive green shade. Next, I'm taking Electric, which is one of the duochrome shades with a green gold shift, and patting that on top of Destiny. This one is thankfully a lot easier to work with than the other duochrome shade Cube. I'm also going to extend Roxy to my lower lash line using my Zoeva Detail Shader brush. And then just buffing it out a bit. I'm going to take Fudge on the outer edges and really just try and concentrate a really minute amount because this shade can go very pigmented very quickly, so I'm just trying to be a little bit careful with it. And again, I find patting motions and small buffing motions to be the most effective at making sure it just stays where I want it to stay. So I'm just kind of wriggling the brush around to make sure it blends with the other shades around it. Again, I'm taking a really small amount of Fudge and adding that to the lower lash line just at the outer edges. And this is going to give my eyes a little bit more definition. Again, I'm just blending just to make sure there's no harsh edges and lines. And lastly, I'm going to take a bit more of Roxy and build that up on the lower lash line just so that the colour peeps through a bit more. You know, I never would have thought to pair peach and olive together, but I actually really like this colour combination. So this is an example of how things can go really dramatic really quickly with this palette. I tried to keep it wearable, but it kind of turned out like this, and I don't mind it. So I'm going to start by adding Edge, which is a matte mustard yellow shade. I really like it, into my crease. I had very little on my brush to begin with, so I'm adding a second layer. Next, I'm going to take Rowdy, which is one of those super pigmented shades like Fudge that you have to be careful not to get everywhere. And I'm using a small tapered brush to add that into the outer V. And I don't want to go past the center of my eyelid. Again, with the darker shades, I'm just dabbing it in to disperse the pigment. I'm going to build it up a bit more and bring it out into a wing. I know it doesn't look particularly well blended right now, but I am going to fix it up later. I'm going to add more of Edge into the crease just to bring more contrast. And just blend the edges where Rowdy and Edge meet. I know some people like to use tape to get that really defined wing, but I personally prefer to just softly diffuse it with a clean blending brush, which is what I'm doing here, and just keep blending until the edges look relatively clean. Again, I'm building Rowdy up, especially where the crease is, because I feel like it's not dark enough. Next, I'm wetting a synthetic brush and adding Adorn onto the mobile lid, which is a metallic copper shade. I found this works best with a damp brush to bring out maximum shine. And I'm mostly concentrating this shade from the inner lid to the center, connecting it up with Rowdy. I'm just quickly blending the edges out and then taking more of Rowdy because I feel like it got a little bit lost under the copper shade. Once I've done that, I'm going to blend where Adorn and Rowdy meet. I'm also going to add more of edge into the crease because I actually really like yellow in the crease. Who would have thought? I think this works so well because purple and yellow are complementary colors. Just blending everything out again. Then lastly, I'm going to add Rowdy on the lower lash line using a small detail brush so it doesn't go everywhere. I actually really like this shade on the lower lash line because it's a little bit more interesting than the usual black or brown that I usually wear. And this is the final look. I think this is my favorite so far, and I've paired this with Blood 2 from Pat McGrath Labs. Yes, I did buy in the entire Lust 4 collection. Don't tell my husband. So those are the 4 looks I've created so far. Part 2 with more dramatic looks will be coming out shortly. Let me know if you do try any of these out. I'd love to see if you recreate any of them. Please tag me, comment. Anyway, I hope you found this useful, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.